Back in my early 20s, I worked for a big British clothing company. Um, don't know if we're allowed to say it on the podcast, but they were to do with tennis and were very popular in the music scene. You could probably guess where they are.
Well played.
Who are they?
We're quite good at describing without saying.
Yeah. And I worked for them for over 3 or 4 years, and ended up at the head office. But before I was at the head office, I was running the Stratford store. And I remember one turnover between seasons where I basically was up for about 32 hours changing over the old stock for the new stock. And the only thing that was getting me through was the fact that my anxiety, fueled with my then massive caffeine addiction, was pulling me through that overnight, just making sure everything got out. And I look back on it now and I realise how much it affected me, both for the rest of that month at work and also for the rest of my life, because I now don't ever think about pushing myself anywhere near as hard as that on anything. I think it's something that a lot of workplaces overlook, just how far someone is willing to go to do something, but also at the same time, those people may not realise how dangerous it is for both their physical and mental health.
So obviously we're focusing on mental health in the workplace. How, if any, how did you feel supported or not by your employer at that point? Was it just you for working it out yourself, managing it yourself?
Yeah, I haven't really received a lot of support mental health wise in a lot of places. I think it's only been recently, in the last 4 or 5 years, places have started to see, and especially with the pandemic and everything that's happened, a lot more people have really seen that people's mental health as well as their physical health is huge. So back then I didn't have any support. My support was having half a day off the next day before having to come in for another shift, and then going out the night after and getting absolutely off my face. Then not having to worry about it anymore because it's been dealt with. Now, if I feel stressed about anything, I've got numbers I can call. I've got people I can talk to in the office. Pretty much anyone I can talk to in the office. And there's also more of a leeway to taking time off because of your mental health as well, which is, I think, drastically a better improvement in the work environment.
Definitely. So it sounds like there's a support infrastructure around you. Has that been a combination of building that yourself and I'm gonna call it falling on your feet with employment? So in other words, we're at Flaunt now, being in an environment that is really understanding of these real impactful feelings and emotions that the vast majority of us are dealing with day in, day out, whether you as an outsider to that person know it or not. Is it been a combination? So you said 4 or 5 years. You mentioned that timescale, which I would agree with something. I'll tell you something after this. But has it been a case of you've had to work hard to find the resources and the numbers to call that you've kind of got up your sleeve anyway, because you've lived and learned how you need to live and learn with that? Plus then you've, as I say, fallen on your feet with with an employer who understands. Is it a combination of that where you've helped yourself?
Yeah, I think a lot of people our age especially have had to figure those bits out by themselves. Some are smart enough to go and get therapy and help. Others have just found ways of being able to deal with it personally. I mean, we as a generation, we are the highest undiagnosed sufferers of ADHD and autism, which I found out I'm actually undiagnosed of earlier this year, and I wouldn't have been able to do that without the support from work. So it does come in a combination of the two, and it is something that I think a lot of younger generations have a better ability to be looked after by their workplace.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
There's opportunities there for all workplaces to really extend out and help a lot more. I think it's also a huge thing to because you're not going to be able to ever help them fully. The workplace is not a therapist place, and you're never going to get rid of all the stresses of work and life. It's impossible to do that. The only way to do that is to not have to work, but then we'd all have to get paid money somehow. So, but yeah, it's one of those situations where a workplace can provide those opportunities and those helpful call lines and places that they can go to. Even things that they can read to help them out, and it's the next few generations hopefully will have that support from a lot more places. Otherwise, you're going to have to figure it out on yourself, and as tough as that is, there are other people doing the exact same thing. So it's always good to reach out and talk to someone, even if you don't think there is someone there. There's always a helping hand somewhere. At least
it's interesting, that generational thing, and earlier on in the conversation you mentioned that 4 to 5 year point. I would hold my hands up and say that I am in lots of people have very stressful jobs. To do the job and this isn't me versus anyone else, but I can only speak on behalf of my experience. I look back on my early career in sales and new business, and there are clear signs of what I would now, I'm not going to say diagnose, but I would now identify as affecting my mental health. And I would probably echo your 4 to 5 year timeline. Maybe that's just coincidence, but I really don't think it is. You and I have been working, we've had our careers on a pretty similar time span as well. It probably would, I'd maybe shorten it a little bit and say, certainly at Flaunt, I've been here 2.5 years, maybe a little bit earlier than that, but not by much, where mental health suddenly landed in my mind with acknowledgement probably from others. It certainly became a thing that is important and acknowledged. And I think that allowed me, or when I've allowed myself the time to look back and think of the stresses of sales, new business, and obviously I'm being selfish here, but I can only talk about what I do, that it's a very, very stressful, high pressure role with lots of rejection, lots of being ignored, and that there's just no point in not acknowledging and ignoring the fact that lots and lots of situations I've been in previously in my career, I wouldn't have even labelled it as something concerning from a mental health perspective, but now absolutely I'm in an environment where if I said to whoever I needed to say it to here, not only do I feel like there's a culture and an environment has been built here from the leadership team and around that I can, voice these things, but there's the widespread acknowledgement of this as a thing and as something that we should be able to not only address but talk about.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm in a much better position to be able to do that. And don't get me wrong, my role is still as hard, if not harder, than it was 4 to 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever. But there's no denying that it wasn't a thing. It wasn't a thing for me. Mental health, I genuinely don't think I would have known really what that was 5+ years ago.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it's also, going back onto that generational thing, it's something that I think the generation before us, our parents and our grandparents and stuff, they all didn't have that support because scientifically it wasn't really there either.
No.
And I think that is something that we've seen, especially with the idea of tech and everything now and how the world has come close together, that these ideas and processes have been spread around more, and it's becoming more readily available for everyone. I mean, like you were saying, I wouldn't understand sales the same way that you do at all, but from a dev perspective, there's imposter syndrome. I mean, everyone can get imposter syndrome, and it's just that I've dealt with that hundreds and thousands of times, and I can guarantee that the team deal with it as well. And like, it's something that a lot of people go through, and your mind just goes, no, it's just you. You're the one that's dealing with this, and you have to deal with this yourself. But if I'd have said that to myself 5 years ago, I would have thought that. I would have really knuckled down on that point. But now with all of this new plethora of science and technology and everything else, it really narrows that field down so that people can understand that there is more to our mental health than just being able to brush it off and move on. It's good to be able to look back as well and say, that was stressful for me, because then you are also dealing with it again and growing from it, so that you can deal with future stresses as well, which is good.
What do you think? I think, having read, I'm going to plug your little blog post in. Having read your recent blog post that people should definitely check out on our website, about imposter syndrome, about mental health, what do you think that employers should be doing, can be doing, if they don't feel like they're doing enough? Or let's say they're maybe a smaller team and they haven't necessarily they haven't faced up to the fact yet that an employer has collared them and said, look, I'm really not feeling in a good space here, can I take some time or whatever? What do you think's important, just from a culture or an employment, quite literally a benefits package, or however you want to kind of term it? What do you think employers should be looking at doing?
I think it's a grey area still at the moment, because obviously the employers want to get the best and the most work out of all of their employees, and as an employee you want to be able to give them that as well. But the idea of being able to really focus on that employee from a leadership perspective can be done individually. I mean, it's been done here to a great degree, and there's obviously still huge room to improve with it. But the idea that you can pull any of them aside and just be like, can I have 5 minutes to talk with you? Whether it's about stuff at home, whether it's about your workload, whether it's about anything, they're there to listen. And it can just be that 5 minutes that can help out massively. The other thing that I think is beneficial, that I think a lot of companies say they do, but they don't really give them that extra ethos, is in healthcare packages. Mental health is now readily available for employees, and all it needs is a phone number from that provider to be able to talk to someone, and you can get diagnosed over the phone these days and all sorts. And I think if an employee is serious about that kind of thing, they will push that onto their employers, their employees, and tell them that these resources are available for them. It's hugely beneficial. I've used a lot of those resources, especially in the last couple of years, and it's gotten me to the point I am, and like the happiness level that I'm at, and the understanding of the way my brain works compared to other people's, because I'm obviously not going to understand how like you or anyone thinks, but I know how my brain thinks, so now I can deal with it a lot better. And I'm still learning. I'll probably still be learning until the day I move on, and that's it. But those resources should be there and should always be available, like any health plan. And I think that's the first step that any company should take. Not just putting it there and going, there you go, it's there for their sake. It's actually sitting down with the people and going, this is what we've got for you. If you need it, you don't even have to tell us. That's the information that you have. And if you do need to tell us and you need to talk to us, we're also here for you. And it's that openness and being able to, ready to help, that I think opens doors for other people.
I'm pretty sure I'll know the answer to this because I'm pretty sure everyone will have the same answer to this. I'm, as you're saying that, mainly about the cultural side of the business rather than just the benefits package, so the people and the relationships. I am firmly with you that if I need to speak to anyone here, I can do because I feel comfortable, and I think that's testament to culture that we've got here. But I'm racking my brains of all previous workplaces that I've been at and people that I've either reported directly into or, you know, their boss, going further up the kind of chain. There's not a chance I would have felt comfortable going to some of those characters. I think it would have been scoffed at. I think ignored, pull your socks up, get on with it, that kind of thing. And I think really it's quite a big task to be able to instill a culture and the confidence and the trust from an employee level across the board, that you can actually go and approach these people and collar them and just say, look, I'm feeling shit, for example, or, you know, my mind's all over the place, I'm just not focusing on things, I need a little bit of a breather. And to feel comfortable with that is a massive thing, a huge thing, because as I say, I genuinely believe most people could identify in their past working experience people and cultures where that's just not conducive.
Yeah, you're never going to get it. You're never always going to get it in every culture. And the other side to that is the leadership teams in that situation might not want to feel that they are becoming too friendly with their employees and becoming like, because they don't think they'll get the best work out of them. Yeah. But to that, I say is a load of shit, to be honest with you, because you can still be human and still talk to someone. You don't have to be close friends with them. I mean, I don't know the life story of anyone here, really, you know, to the nth degree, but I'd still class the people in this work environment as friends, and I'd still be able to go to them and talk to them. And I expect the same back from them to me. I would love to be able to talk to people if they need it. And that's just about caring about how people feel.
Empathy.
Yeah, it's empathy.
And
yeah.
I'm going to say something that we've already said before, but you've got to give a shit, and you can't fake giving a shit.
Yeah, you can't.
That is one of Lee's biggest things, and there's nothing truer when you talk about this topic. We could talk about a completely different one, which we have already done, and that same mantra has come up, and it's. I don't think you can argue with it. You can tell as well quite quickly, I think, and you learn that as you get older and more into your career, when people don't give a shit, and it's either a tick box exercise or they genuinely are quite open about not giving a shit.
Yeah.
And that's where, I mean, you know, there's been cultures and people where I could not think of anything worse than what's the point in opening up to them, because it's either going to be thrown back in your face or ignored. And it's sad to say, because I guess we could say we can count ourselves lucky that we work here and we don't have this, but it's sad to say that I think those cultures still exist.
Oh yeah, they massively do. And it's a layoff from previous generations' cultures. It's not been until our generation and the movement of the digital world and the industries that are within it, the fact that we're having like faster entertainment, streaming services, everything like that, that the mindset of people are now starting to see a big change. Our ability to be able to collect news from anywhere around the world and create opinions, whether they're different from other people's, and what have you, means that on a global scale, we can all talk to each other. We can all be empathetic towards each other. And so in a work environment, when you're there with those people, whether it's 5 people, whether it's 150 people, whether it's thousands of people, all of those people will be working with you day in, day out. So you're going to see most of them face to face. And not being able to give a shit is going to be fucking obvious to those people. Yeah. So, and it's even bigger, especially with like the pandemic and everything happening, and we saw people working from home, Zoom calls and what have you, and the fun that we all had with them, that there was this kind of layer that was portrayed over it of like, oh, we can hide behind our computers now. We don't have to see face to face. And now we're back in the real world. Those facades that we had are being pulled away. So people's mental health is now even more public display. So I think it's something that is massive in a workplace culture, and it only takes one or two people in that culture. It doesn't take everybody to be empathetic to everyone, because that's never going to happen. We're not in a perfect world, everyone thinks differently.
Characters as well.
Exactly.
We're humans, we're characters. There's diversity amongst all of that, but you're absolutely right. It doesn't have to be monumental to begin with, but it can make a difference. And making a difference to me is what we said. It's giving a shit, but being genuine about it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really have to be much more complicated than that. Unfortunately, the antithesis of that is still in existence out there, and there's no reason for it not to stop, really, because it's not a humongous investment that needs to be made up front. It's small understanding, really, which would then compound over time, I think.
Yeah. No, I mean, in the working world, it doesn't matter what industry you're in. If there's no real need to have to do it to change their output of their work, the output of the product, whatever they have, the big bosses at the top aren't going to care, which is a big shame, because I can guarantee you now, if you can make sure that your employees are happy mentally and physically to whatever their degree may be, they will put in their best work for you, 110%. You will always get the best out of someone. If they know if they have an issue, they can go to someone, and it's that simple. It does seem like a complicated minefield, this mental health situation, because everybody has different mental health problems that they have to deal with. Everybody does, well, even on the small scales. But it's as simple as just being able to listen to that person and go, okay, how can we help, and what steps can we take, and that's it.